Ah, yes, the Founding Fathers. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and, the other ones. Okay, so I was exaggerating a little bit, but let's be realistic here. We all mostly just know these seven Founding Fathers, and even John Jay is a bit of a stretch. That's not a coincidence. The historian, Richard Morris, identified these seven as the main Founding Fathers. That's because of their leadership roles and their longevity. We also think of them when we think of the Founding Fathers, because these seven Founding Fathers signed three of the most important documents that we think of when we think of the Founding Fathers: the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. That's something most of the Founding Fathers didn't actually do, and that makes these seven a sort of A tier of the Founding Fathers. But there are a lot of guys sitting around back here, and that's not even all of them. So today I want to talk about some of the B tier Founding Fathers. Some of the ones that are maybe a little bit significant, may have had some leadership positions, and signed one or two of the founding documents, but generally get forgotten by history. Let's start off with a simple one: Robert Livingston. Livingston was at the Second Continental Congress, where he was one of the drafters of the Declaration of Independence. He was representing New York, but he became sick and had to leave. He never ended up signing the Declaration, but he sent his cousin to sign in his place. He would, however, become relevant again later as the man who administered the oath of office to George Washington when he became president. And after that, as ambassador to France, he was the one who negotiated the Louisiana Purchase. Now let's head down south and talk about a Virginian, Richard Henrey Lee. And yes, before you ask, he is related to that other famous Lee. Lee was a member of the House of Burgesses, a sort of colonial parliament in Virginia, and he was far from alone there. He was a Virginia delegate to the First and Second Continental Congresses, where he signed the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation, under which he became President of Congress, an office which my American viewers will know for not existing anymore, which is probably why he's been forgotten. While we're in Virginia, we might also talk about George Mason. Mason was in the House of Burgesses too. He didn't want to go to the Continental Congress because he was busy drafting the Virginia Constitution and the Virginia Bill of Rights. At the time, state identities were much stronger than they are today. Notably, his Virginia legislation became inspiration for their U.S. counterparts. He did go to the Constitutional Convention, where he refused to sign the Constitution for not including the Bill of Rights. And keeping with our theme, we could talk about the last Virginian on this list, Peyton Randolph. Randolph was, you guessed it, also in the House of Burgesses. Notably, he was the Speaker of the House. He was also the last Speaker of the House. He was from the wealthiest family in all of Virginia. While we like to portray Thomas Jefferson as this wealthy aristocrat, he had nothing on Randolph. In fact, he was Randolph's cousin, the less wealthy cousin, I might add. Randolph was a delegate to the First Continental Congress from Virginia, but he died of a stroke while having dinner with Thomas Jefferson before he could sign any of the founding documents. Thus, he is often forgotten by history. Now let's head up north and talk about everybody's favorite founding father, Sam Adams. Adams was a revolutionary who strongly advocated independence. He was in Boston during the Boston Massacre and was at the Boston Tea Party, although the specific nature of his involvement is disputed. Adams was at the First and Second Continental Congresses, where he signed the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation, but today he is probably best known for having a beer named after him. That's somewhat of a historical misunderstanding, though. People often say that he was a brewer, but he wasn't. He was actually a malter, which is a sort of middle process that happens prior to brewing. Now, Roger Sherman is probably the founding father on this list I most wanted to talk about. When we talk about founding fathers, we almost never mention more than four states: Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and Massachusetts. But Roger Sherman is from Connecticut. Sherman was at both Continental Congresses. where he was a drafter of the Declaration of Independence. He signed the Declaration, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. But he also signed the petition to the King and the Articles of Association, which makes him the only person to sign all 5 of those documents. He was signing everything. Also, if anyone ever wondered why we have a Senate with non-proportional representation, then Sherman's your guy. He came up with that to protect the voice of small states like Connecticut. In the end, the reason he's been forgotten by history, despite being involved in everything, is he was a bad public speaker and he didn't like taking notes. So there's no Sherman's Journal to give us insight into his experiences. And lastly, we have Robert Morris. Morris is the only one on this list to be born in England. He was not elected to the First Continental Congress, but seeing as he lived in Philadelphia, he was around for the whole process. He was elected to the Second Continental Congress, where he signed the Declaration of Independence, and was put on the Committee of Safety, which, despite its name, was actually overseeing the war. He was the primary supplier of gunpowder to the Continental Army, and was made head of the Navy. Now, hopefully you've learned something about the Founding Fathers that you didn't know before. And remember, if you want to be remembered by history, you need to write stuff down, keep being alive, and liking this video wouldn't hurt either.